The Laughing Cavalier here, presenting to you another tale of these troubled times. Today, I shall be doing a somewhat brief rant about Sharpe's Waterloo, in particular, the scenes featuring the farmhouse of Sainte. Now, as my comments continually remind me, I need to finish my Waterloo review, and don't worry, it is slowly coming along. In the meantime, however, I thought it would be a good idea to do a rant about Sharpe's Waterloo. Now, this episode of Sharpe is 1 hour and 40 minutes long, so instead of doing a general review, I will be doing a series of rants looking at various historical events featured in the episode and compare them to their historical counterparts. Now, if you're not aware of the Sharpe series, then I will give you a brief backstory. Bernard Cornwell wrote his first Sharpe novel, Sharpe's Eagle, in 1981, and has since then written 24 books covering the fictional adventures of Richard Sharpe in the very real Napoleonic Wars. He starts off as a low-ranking soldier destined to rise no higher than sergeant, but all that changes when he saves the life of the future Duke of Wellington, and is rewarded with an officer's commission. Sharpe originally belonged to the green-coated 95th Rifle Regiment, arguably the most famous British regiment of the Napoleonic Wars, and with his band of chosen men embarks on a series of adventures across Portugal, Spain, France and Flanders during the Napoleonic Wars. Whilst the book series begins Sharpe's story during the Second Anglo-Maratha War in India, the show is firmly focused on Europe and did take a few liberties with Sharpe's story and historical events. By the time of Sharpe's Waterloo, he is a lieutenant colonel and a staff officer to the Prince of Orange. More on him in a future video. And with that out of the way, onto the rant. In the show, Sharpe ends up defending the farmhouse of Sainte from the French during the Battle of Waterloo. Now, the layout of the farmhouse is a bit different to the history. The entrance to it looks okay, but the main house appears to be on the left here, with the barn on the right. As can be seen, it is the other way around in real life. Also in Sharpe, they have a large woodland in front of the farmhouse, whereas, in reality, it was mainly open ground. I expect they filmed it near a wood so they could hide how few extras they had for the battle scenes. There was an orchard to the south, which should be around here, but it is missing. I think the farmhouse is also facing the wrong way, since later on the French attacked from the front, which, historically, was facing east, whilst the historical French started their attack from the south. Harper also points and asks,
"Is that where the Prussians are coming from?"
If the farmhouse is facing the right way, then he would actually be pointing east, where the Prussians should be coming from, but instead he appears to be pointing west if the farmhouse were facing the right way. Overall though, from looking at it, I can tell it was based off of the historical one, and we do get some nice little references like,
What happened to the gates?
Well, these gates were burned by an English regiment for firewood, keep themselves warm and dry their clothes.
Which is all true. Unfortunately, there is one major problem. Notice that the troops defending it are speaking English. The problem is that historically, the men defending Sainte were predominantly German. The garrison was made up of the 2nd Light Battalion of the King's German Legion, who wore a similar uniform to the 95th Rifles, although there were a few little differences, such as a slightly different type of shako with a pom-pom instead of a plume, and a different style of cuff, with the 95th having a white edge, whilst the KGL's was black. They were also supported by a detachment of light infantry from the 5th KGL, who wore red coats and had blue facings, as seen here, although they didn't arrive till after the first attack, so should not be here at this time in the episode. Now, I can forgive the uniform inaccuracies a bit since they had so little budget, but seeing as though quite a few of the extras were Turkish and not speaking English, meaning that you had to record the background chatter and add it in afterwards, couldn't you have just dubbed in some German voices for the background stuff? Now everyone is going to go thinking it was the British troops defending the farmhouse. A bit later on, Sharpe spies the French beginning their attack. Now historically, the farmhouse was located in a very important position, being in the centre of the Allied line. This meant that when Napoleon ordered forward his First Corps, commanded by Jean-Baptiste Drouot, Comte d'Erlon, to attack Wellington Centre, the farmhouse was in their way, and so the 54th and 55th Regiments of the line attacked it, beginning their assault on the orchard to the south, as previously mentioned, whilst this episode teleports them to the east. Sharpe runs off with his band of merry chosen men. Oh wait, sorry, they all got promoted to sergeant for the last episode, and fights with the French skirmishers. I do have to ask, why were these French mounted officers so far forward? I can't see their rank, but they must be fairly high up if they are mounted, at the very least company or battalion commanders. They should probably be with or just behind the main body of troops, not out front with the skirmishers. Now, it is good to see the French have their voltigeurs, the men seen here with the yellow and green epaulards and pom-poms, who were the light infantry. But there are not many of them, whereas in reality, nearly a quarter of the French troops should be skirmishers. Meanwhile, there is an overabundance of grenadiers, the troops wearing the red epaulettes and pom-poms, who should be present in similar numbers to the voltigeurs, whilst the fusiliers, the regular infantry, are lacking the pom-poms denoting what company they belong to, but again, budget constraints and all that has to be taken into consideration. Sharpe dashes back to the farmhouse.
Front ranks present! Fire! Fire!
Now, why on earth are the French moving forward in a big marching column? You would deploy like this if you're marching to the battlefield, not use it as a formation to attack. The French should be deployed in an attack column, and even then, the battalions would be in some sort of line formation once they began their assault, since, by this stage, the column had evolved quite a bit from the start of the Napoleonic Wars. Also, why are all of your drummers at the front behind about a dozen men? How are the men at the back of the column meant to keep formation without drummers? Not to mention the lack of officers, although they are able to spawn more in later from the looks of it. The defenders are not much better though. Historically, they barricaded the doors to stop the enemy from getting in, but here they build a big barricade outside, fire one volley, well, Sharpe does say give them 2 volleys and then run, but they actually fire by rank, so in effect each man has only fired 1 shot. Then they dash in and close the gates at the last second. That is a stupid plan, because waiting until the last second runs the risk of the enemy getting the gates open. And by the way, in this shot, after they dash in, it is wide open with no one closing it. Whilst now you have left a load of wagons and so on outside that could have been put up against the door to blockade it, which the enemy can now use as cover. If you wanted a barricade to use as a rampart to put your troops behind, why not put it inside of the farmhouse courtyard, so if they do break the door down, you then have a good place to funnel them into a kill zone. At least the French do have their sapeurs, the rather large bearded men wearing bearskins and wielding axes. They were basically the combat engineers of the French army, and were insanely brave, and I'm glad they're shown in this episode. Okay, where on earth did the French soldiers get their hands on ladders? We don't see them bringing any with them, and since the French would not have had a massive amount of time to prepare for a full-blown siege, I doubt they would have had any with them anyway, which seems to be supported by the fact that, historically, they were having to boot each other up onto the walls due to not having ladders. The only explanation I can think of is that the defenders used some ladders in that barricade they left outside, which, given their mistakes thus far, would not surprise me. Sharpe, meanwhile, is doing what he does best, being the Napoleonic version of Goblin Slayer.
Filthy Frenchman.
Are you going to kill them?
Of course I am.
But what if there was a good...
Frenchman.
They might exist!
Not bloody likely, mate.
Bastards! Bastard. Bastards. Crafty little bastard.
By the way, I always found it funny that he ended up finding true love with a French widow, whose first husband was a soldier in Napoleon's army. Now, firing from up here and picking off officers makes perfect sense, but I do have to ask though about Patrick Harper's teleportation powers. In one scene, he's next to Sharpe, passing him loaded rifles to shoot. Literally 10 seconds pass, and he's now down on the ground level, shouting up to Sharpe about the gates, and, by the way, I think those 10 seconds have passed in real time, since he gives him a rifle, then that dead soldier appears in front of Sharpe, he pushes him away, and then fires that rifle, meaning that he still had the last one Harper gave him for that whole 10 seconds. What made Harper leave his post just in time to see the French breaking down the gate? Well, other than the need to advance the plot. Although I will concede that if he ran, he perhaps could have gotten down the ladder to the ground level in time. Also, can I just point out that this French drummer boy is wearing a shako of the 21st Regiment of the Line, who were not involved on the attack in La Haye Sainte. Granted, your budget was low, but just put a cloth cover over like with the rest of the men. You could easily have hidden that mistake. Eventually, the French break in and... Ugh. Yeah, that is another thing I hate about Sharpe. The drill. Historically, the order is make ready, present, fire. It should look something like this, courtesy of a rather nervous 16-year-old version of yours truly. This drill looks more like something I would see in Zulu during the latter part of the Victorian era. Now, in this version of the battle, I think they combine a few elements of the battle for the other farmhouse of Hougoumont, like the men struggling to shut the gates after the French broke in, and capturing a French drummer boy. which all happened on the other side of the battlefield. I don't mind this too much though, since it does at least reference those events at least. They finally get the gates shut, and we see this officer.
Now kill the bastards! Finish them off!
Now later on, he is named as Captain Macduff, and he mentions something about being from the Guards and is attached to the King's German Legion. However, his shako plate has the number 53 on it, standing for the 53rd Regiment of Foot, who, firstly, had red facings, not royal blue, and secondly, were not at Waterloo. My guess is that they've perhaps borrowed this from someone like a reenactor or had it in stock from another production. But still, it is rather jarring once you zoom in on other finer details, particularly when he states something about being in the Guards. His life, though, is saved from an insane sapeur by Sharpe. Now, they do correctly show this first attack failing. I won't mention the second attack yet, since it overlaps with a future video, but I will mention that the farmhouse was captured by the 13th Leger at about 6 o'clock. Yet in Sharpe, Macduff and the garrison are still there at the end of the battle, meaning that in this version it hasn't fallen at all. Well, that was my quick rant on La Haye Sainte. As I said, I will probably be doing a few of these looking at this particular episode of Sharpe. I am glad they kept some elements of the history in, and whilst a lot can be explained by the small budget, there are some changes that still annoy me, and trust me, we will be looking at those in future videos. Also, after the end credits, there will be a quick note about the future of the channel, so stick around for that if you wish. In the meantime, thank you for listening. This has been the Laughing Cavalier, wishing you a good day. So first off, I wanted to say thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Well, at the time of recording this it is nearly at 1,000, but I thought I'd better mention it now since it might be a few weeks before I get another video done. We have certainly come a long way in 2 years. I do have a special video planned for the proper 1,000 celebration, but I haven't yet found the time to record it, I'm afraid. But do keep an eye out for it sometime in the near future. Now that I am approaching 1,000 subscribers, time to shill. Once I hit 1,000, I will apply to the YouTube Partnership Programme. Although since YouTube has declared a holy war on history channels recently, I haven't much hope, although then again I do mainly cover the Tudors and the Stuarts, and there aren't too many Nazis in that time period, so I might be alright. To help, therefore, I have set up a Patreon account, although for now it will not have many tiers since I cannot really commit to a regular timetable for uploads at the moment. But in future I will probably improve on it and have a proper reward system in place. I think something like a Patreon account will work better, since I don't want to do sponsored videos that end up shilling for, I don't know, Shilly McShillington's razor blades or something. It might seem a bit much asking for money, but it will help to buy things like books and other sources for my videos, and if it takes off, I can also look to improve things like the quality of my videos, editing and so on. I will link it below if you wish to subscribe. Following on from that, a quick update about future videos. As I have mentioned, part 2 of my Waterloo review will be my next full movie review, probably followed by the proper 1,000 subscriber special. I will then probably have a few smaller quick reviews and short history videos. After that, the plan is to work on Tudor Rant Part 4, looking at the 2003 Henry VIII miniseries. I do have a plan to actually branch out and look at a non-historical series. I won't say which one, but it is made by the BBC, so I will be stuck in copyright purgatory for a few months, no doubt. If people want to see that sort of thing on the channel, then do tell me in the comments down below. In the meantime, once again, this has been the Laughing Cavalier, wishing you a good day.